Hello and welcome to Escape from Mount Backlog, one man's quest to defeat his game's library. Today we'll be looking at Costume Quest, developed by Double Fine and released on Steam in 2011. Costume Quest is one of the properties that resulted from Amnesia fortnights that Double Fine had during the period of Brutal Legends development. During the Amnesia fortnights, the team split into 4 smaller groups and worked on prototypes for potential future games, later presenting these to the rest of the Double Fine team for review. All 4 prototypes were well received internally, and the ideas were set aside once they began work on Brutal Legend again. Following the completion of that game, Double Fine believed EA had authorized work on a Brutal Legend sequel, but discovered later that the sequel had been, quote, put on hold indefinitely, which sounds a hell of a lot like being cancelled, leaving the studio with no other projects. Instead of starting work on a new big budget project, Schafer decided to turn back to the Amnesia Fortnite prototypes and sought to develop them as smaller games among several publishers. 2 of them, Costume Quest and Stacking, were picked up by then publisher THQ for publication as downloadable titles. Costume Quest's development was led by Tasha Harris, Double Fine's lead animator and former Pixar animator, with Tim Schafer providing support where needed. The concept of the game was an idea that Harris had prior to joining Double Fine, but never had the chance to expand on while at Pixar. She wanted the game to capture that, quote, nostalgic feeling of these kids playing dress-up. Though Harris's original concept was not based on a role-playing game, she considers the game to have been influenced by older Nintendo games, such as Dragon Quest and Final Fantasy. She also took cues from the Legend of Zelda series, where exploration would be paced through the acquisition of new items within the game. Harris stated that she wanted to, quote, make a game that was like RPGs that she loved growing up, but make it modernized so it looks cool and people enjoy playing it now. Unlike Double Fine's previous games, which had 4 to 5 year development cycles, which is long by any standard, Costume Quest was completed in under a year. The time frame and team size were based on Schafer's previous experience in developing The Secret of Monkey Island. Schafer reflected that this limited time scale was beneficial to their development process. The shortened schedule forced them to limit the scope of the game and prevented feature creep. With limited scope, they were also able to focus on making the core gameplay features fun and enjoyable throughout the course of the game. There was also better communication through the smaller team and with individual members given more control of their own responsibilities. The work done on the game engine for Brutal Legend was essential for Costume Quest, allowing the team to quickly reuse existing technology without licensing costs for other third-party engines. Schafer has previously estimated that the development budget for Costume Quest was around $2 million US. The plot of the game centers around you as the player playing as either Ren or Reynolds, one half of a pair of twins, your goal being to save the other half from candy-crazed monsters during Halloween. These monsters, or grubbins, may or may not be teenagers, perceived to be monsters by the child protagonists. I find that interesting, as the game centers around the child protagonists and their imaginations running wild, especially evident through combat. It gives credence to this reading. The game plays like an adventure game, in the sense that you explore the world one map at a time, with map-specific quests and exploration, and combat. The game is split between 2 phases. During the map exploration phase, you have to complete quests, solve environmental puzzles, no, that's not the right word, more like challenges, and trick or treat at all the houses. This mechanic results in you either receiving a candy bonus from adults who answer the door, or initiate combat if the door is answered by a grubbin. To accomplish these tasks, you as the character unlock different costumes which give you exploration abilities like wheelie shoes for quicker travel and going over ramps, a shield which will protect you from falling hazards, and later a stealth ability. In combat, the costumes grant combat abilities based on the costume itself. Wearing a robot costume, You're a battle mech now, with a missile barrage attack. You're wearing the knight costume? Congrats, you're now a chivalrous knight who can defend other party members with their shield. And these costumes are great and lead to many, many different combinations. Think jobs from the old Final Fantasy games. In the main game there are 11 collectible costumes, 10 of which are usable in combat. My favorites include the robot with a missile barrage that damages all enemies, the Statue of Liberty with its Anthem ability, the most patriotic party heal in any game ever, the pumpkin that uses All Hallows Eve to cut all enemies' HP in half, the vampire who has "there's a bat in my hair" that damages and leeches life from enemies to heal the party, and the mighty, glorious unicorn who uses my pretty panacea to resurrect a fallen ally and return them to full health with rainbows and joy. At the end of the day, what else can I really say about Costume Quest? It's a well-developed, fun little adventure game that only took me about 7 hours. I suppose I could talk a little bit more about how the game presents itself. The cel-shaded art style really gives it almost a timeless look and feel. It would have been right at home on the Dreamcast. But playing it now, 6 years after initial release, well actually 7 seeing as it came out on consoles in 2010, it still looks good. It ages remarkably well. I mean, the same can be said of other cel-shaded games like Legend of Zelda's Wind Waker and Jet Set Radio. The cel-shaded style ages very, very gracefully. Because the game is also so short, I mean, capping out as said at 6 or 7 hours, it never outstays its welcome. A lot has been said about games need to be a certain length. You know, that is applicable to open world games. People demand a certain amount of content within those games. Sometimes it gets pushed a little bit too far. I'm looking at you, AC Unity. That map was a mess 1 hour into the game. Sometimes the world is a bit too empty. I'm looking at you, Just Cause 2. Huge, expansive map with barely anything to do in it. Even though the combat system can seem shallow at first, with the amount of costumes and roles they are to fill with these costumes, and the fact that you have 3 party members by the end of the game, means that you can work on some really interesting combinations. One of my favorite combinations was using the pumpkin, unicorn, and vampire, for example. The pumpkin would deal out tons of damage every round. The vampire was there to sustain the party should something go slightly wrong with its special ability to leech a bit of life. And of course the unicorn was there to resurrect the pumpkin should the pumpkin go down in a fight. Other combinations could work out well too. One that springs to mind is using the robot, the Statue of Liberty, and of course the knight, which are effectively the first 3 costumes you find in game. But once you have a third party member, you can use all 3 in one team. Or, you know, just use the unicorn in everything because the unicorn is bloody glorious. Something else I haven't really talked about is how funny the game can be. It's got good, clean, innocent jokes. Some of the adults that answer the door have a little quip about your costume, about, oh, they wore that when they were young, or that is horrible, you look like a pail of garbage. That's funny to me. It's light-hearted. There's no punching down comedy or anything like that, but there are a few quips and jokes that, you know, tend to keep a smile on your face. And that is the greatest strength of this particular game. I just couldn't stop smiling while playing it. It was just so fun, light, innocent. A complete departure from Daikatana. I'll put a link to that video at the end of this one. All in all, I enjoyed it. I'm going to leave you now with a little nod to one of my favorite sitcoms, which is referenced in this game. If you know which sitcom this is referencing, put it down in the comments, let other people know. And that concludes today's look into Costume Quest. Have you played it? Do you like it? Have you not played it? Or do you plan to play it? Is it maybe stuck in your own backlog? I suggest you give it a look. Please remember to hit that like button and share this video. It really helps me out a lot. I'm trying to grow this channel. Don't forget to subscribe. It only gets weirder from here, folks. Next week, I think we'll dig up the dead.